with that, and then I'll pull up some of my notes on the Greek and other things, and we'll kind of go step by step. Chapter 4 and 5 are a transition. They're the transition into the actual tribulation. So first we see the throne room of heaven, and then we start talking about the Lamb. And so that kind of bleeds over into all the seals. So 4 verse 1. After these things I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven. And the first voice which I heard was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, Come up here, and I will show you things which must take place after this. Immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne set in heaven. The one sat on the throne, and he who sat there was like a jasper and a sardis stone in appearance. And there was a rainbow around the throne, in appearance like an emerald. Around the throne were 24 thrones, and on the thrones I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed in white robes. And they had crowns of gold on their heads. And from the throne proceeded lightnings, thunderings, and voices. 7 lamps of fire were burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. Before the throne there was a sea of glass like crystal. And in the midst of the throne and around the throne were 4 living creatures full of eyes in front and in back. The first living creature was like a lion, the second living creature like a calf. The third living creature had a face like a man, and the fourth living creature was like a flying eagle. The 4 living creatures each had 6 wings, were full of eyes, around and within. And they do not rest day or night, saying, Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. Whenever the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to him who sits on the throne, who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before him who sits on the throne, and worship him who lives forever and ever, and cast their crowns before the throne, saying, You are worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they existed and were created. So before I jump in, what did you guys notice and or anything that popped out?
24 elders.
24 elders. Who do you think those are?
I don't know.
The disciples and the 12 tribes.
Not necessarily the 12 tribes, but supposedly the 12 patriarchs of the tribes, which is an interesting, because then is it Joseph and Levi there because Levi was set aside, or is it Joseph's 2 sons? So don't know, but yes, most likely. At least that's the basic thing that I could find. There are some thoughts that it's at least the 12 disciples, which they don't say if Judas is there or if it's a different disciple, the one that was raised up in Acts, or if it's Paul.
Could be Paul.
Paul might have stepped in there because he was a disciple out of time of Christ. What else?
Some crazy imagery going on there, brother.
There is. So
4 creatures covered in eyes and wings.
those are also is in Ezekiel 21 when he talked about it. The cherubim that pretty much followed the Spirit wherever he moved. So
Continually sing its praise.
And wherever the Spirit was, the cherubim were. I think it was Ezekiel 21:11 or 12 to 19 is where that is found. What else jumped at you? Anything with his appearance? Anything with what was around him?
What didn't stick out, Josh? I mean, this is some craziness going on here. Like you say, it's just starting to hold it onto your hat.
Fair, but there's always certain things that jump out more than others. Like, for an example, what about the crystal sea?
What about the crystal sea?
Do you know what a sea is? Do you know what a sea was in regards to the temple?
The temple, was that not the one surrounded by ox?
It was the one mounted on ox that all the water for cleansing and
Oh, that's
purification
right on.
to remove.
The sacred water.
Correct. But at this time, it's like crystal. Then he's in a lot of the times that we've talked about God. There's been at least normally three different things that they kind of mention in general. Like for example, in Daniel, you have to like the feet. Well, in here, we have feet of brass, or feet of brass in Daniel. Got what his body's made out of. Sometimes eyes of fire. But in here we've got his body, his feet, pretty much, and something new. We have the rainbow, which is not what we would consider a normal rainbow. It's completely green. It's emerald. So,
Yeah, that is odd.
few different things we're gonna hit over. I was just seeing if there was anything else you guys wanted to bring up before I started going through things.
The seven spirits of God.
They're in there as well, correct? The lampstand. So I will make one thing, and you guys can note this, is the church is no longer mentioned until I believe it's Revelation 21 or 22. They are now going to be absent from,
Right now they're in heaven.
supposedly, yes. So, to be brought up, harpazo is to be snatched, which we hear later in Revelation, and we hear in the Gospel. But this is one of the, or this, I guess, kind of starts one of the theories or thoughts on why there's going to be a pre-trib rapture, is the fact that throughout all the tribulation, the church is not mentioned. It is completely absent from what's going on, or at least, I think it's 21, like 21 times in Revelation the name church is mentioned. Most of it up until now, and then only a couple times after, but after the second coming, after the tribulation is done. So, it's one of the main theories on why the harpazo, the rapture, the snatching up of people is going to happen beforehand, because they're not mentioned. Once again, I'm not going to, just like Marty, I'm not going to tell you what is correct and what is wrong, because I think there might actually be multiple ones, because if there's enough evidence to support before, during, and after, maybe he's continuously pulling his people out at certain intervals, the beginning, the halfway mark, and at the end. So,
We'll find out soon
but
enough.
yeah, we'll get there eventually, right?
Right on.
So, let me try to pull up my notes while we go over this. So the first one is, we'll go over verse 1 first. So, after these things I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven, and the first voice which I heard was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, Come up here, and I will show you things which must take place after this. So, metatauta is the word that they use at the beginning and after, and it's assumed that both of these. So the first thing is after these. It's starting kind of like, besides it being the beginning of a sentence, it's the beginning of a full thought. So that after these things, which what we went over was the seven churches. So, and it's going to explain in the next part that I will show you the things which must take place. And so the word must in Greek can translate into these things are inevitable. They're going to happen. There's no doubt. But they must take place after this, which is also the same thing, metatauta, which you'll see metatauto versus metatauta in the Bible. And the only real difference people can assume is either flavor. John's actually the only one who uses this version of it, but it's a plural. So it's normally referring to a set of things that happened and not just one thing, which will reference to all the church things that happened, which when Marty went over the timeline, the prevalent theory is that we had to go through each of these time frames until we get to the end time. So, like I said, standing theory is that after Laodicea, the last church, which is what we're assumed to be in now, Revelation will happen here, which is, other things had to be set up anyway, but everything had to go through. It was almost, if you look at the admonitions, it's also set up in a set of 7 issues that will happen when people start to fall away from God. And at least in my mind, it kind of mimics that as well, to where there's a certain set of things that need to happen in the world. People need to be given time. There will be things that we're going to go through, and at the end, just like where they ended in exile and were brought back to God, Revelation mimics that, to where there are 7 things, there are 7 churches, there are 7 trials, 7 bowls, 7 scrolls, everything that goes through that must happen before we are called back, or God comes to redeem and bring the people back into the New Jerusalem, which also can be indicative of Babylon, or the after the Babylonian exile, them going back and resetting up a New Jerusalem. Everything's going to be destroyed and a brand new one's going to be made. So, alright. Immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne set in heaven. So that set is the next thing. Because the next thing we're going to go over, for the most part,